Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is still the 11th of April 2017, and I heard Boris Johnson saying that how dreadful it was that Assad was poisoning his people. Now, I'm not taking any sides in all of this. The whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, the entire thing, every country across the world is parasitised upon, all the governments parasitised upon. It is Satan's dark aeon. It's going to come to an end with the epiphany. I've talked to you about that before. So I'm not really taking any sides. I just sometimes observe this situation of them all playing against each other, shenanigans, etc. But I just think it was very, very ironic. Boris Johnson saying, oh, it's so dreadful that he's poisoning people. And poisoning his own people. And I don't know who did this attack. I have seen articles that point to the white helmets. Of course, that charity, that charitable organisation connected to the allegedly killed Joe Cox and is associated with being a paramilitary sort of terrorist organisation. But I've heard that the gas attack was associated with them. But anyway, I don't know because I wasn't there. Hear all sorts of stories. Even the alternative media, so-called now, is replete with the table tennis ping pong of this way, that way, this way, that way. They're never getting to any answers whatsoever. It's all, it's very hard to find out what is what, isn't it? What's going on in the world. But I just think it's very, very ironic. Boris Johnson saying, oh, he's poisoning the people, when we only have to look into our sky. I'm looking into the sky right now and I'm seeing a few stripes, a few big stripes of geoengineering, the spraying of our skies with barium and aluminium salts, etc. And they're not just going in a couple of minutes, they're up there for quite some time, then they spread and thicken and make the sky milky. And Boris Johnson's in charge. He's up there in the government. That's going on, spraying our country with poisons, which is, evidence seems to show, connected with the fungi on trees, killing bees, etc. Killing people and, of course, affecting people because of aluminium salts. So we're talking about Alzheimer's and so on, because that's connected to aluminium, and they do predict, oh, there's going to be loads more Alzheimer's. Yeah, well, how do you know? Is it because you know about this poisoning of our skies? Is it because of the drugs you poison us with? Is it because of the poisons you put in the water and the food and the vaccines? Is it anything to do with that? The point is, it's so hypocritical for him to say it's so bad, him poisoning his people. And I thought I'd just mention that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what do we get? Now, people who, yes, I've talked about these names and so on, people quite rightly pointed out, what on earth can we do? What can we do if, we strip it down to the very basics? I am, and my name is called, and so on, and we begin to see how things really lay. Well, first thing to do, I suppose, is to see how it is, see the truth of the situation, to recognise that you're not a name, to recognise that your name is called something, to see how to see the true structure of things. And I think that's a great place to start. And I think get to the absolute fundamentals of everything around us. And really to get there, I suppose, before making any real moves in any direction. I suppose that's one thing we can do. But I can see why people are saying, well, what can we do? We can't sign this, can't use our signature, we can't use the surnames and so on. How does it work? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't have all the answers at all. I am learning as I go on. Hopefully I'm prompting you to go out and start learning as well. I don't know all the answers, but I do know that it's very important, just like I said, to get to the absolute fundamentals, and begin to hold your ground as far as that's concerned. Know what your name is, know what your name is called, and so on. Know how that relates to the law. Know how that relates to them trying to get you into their jurisdiction by admitting that you're a legal fiction, for example. All these sorts of things that we must know if we are to hold our ground. And you can only hold your ground if you know what the ground is, you see. And of course I'm referring to Ephesians 6 when it It's talking about holding your ground, and that's before the epiphany, before the kingdom of God. Just hold still, hold your ground. So I think we've got to certainly know what we're about, know who we are, know we were created by God as well. That's another important thing. We were created by God. A lot of people think that we're created by our parents, but we're not. We're created by God. And that's a very important position to start with, isn't it? And also, if you think about the fact that we're created by God, that's important as far as the law is concerned, isn't it? Because you come under the law as a man or a woman. That's very important. I am a man, I am a woman, created by God, under God's law through Christ. It's quite significant, isn't it? It's quite significant when you think of, for example, people being made with a concoction of genetics from several parents. Who are they? Are they a man or a woman? What are they? Well, they're certainly not created by God, are they? They're created from a concoction of genetics that have been interfered with. They are made by technology. Technology relates to what divides us from God on the negative side. The negative side of technology is what divides us from God. I've explained that in my book. It all relates to Uranus. It relates to the level relating to death, to separation from God. That's what technology really relates to. And so, the highest forms of technology are connected to that dark realm. Hence, Cain built this incredibly advanced city of Enoch. And Cain was, of course, the son of Satan. So, these so-called children who are created by a concoction of genetics from several parents, what are they? Who are they under the law? They can't stand under the law, can they? They are made by man. They are answerable to man, to the random nature and arbitrary law of man, controlled by him. And that isn't a good thing, as we have seen with evidence all about us, as we see with Boris Johnson and the whole thing going on in Syria. But yes, you're created by man, and they are always pushing in the media. If you have a little bit of genetic tweaking, you can stop cancer, you can stop this, you can stop that. As if, we are gods. And of course we're not gods, and that's one of our biggest flaws, is to think we are, or at least I don't. So many people do, and this is why we're in so much trouble. But yes, they do push all this genetic engineering and genetic modification to prevent disease, to keep you safe. But of course, if you're genetically modified, you're a creation of man. You're a creation of technology. You're related to Uranus, the separation, the dark side of Uranus, the separation from God, the divide, the divider. And you're under that jurisdiction totally. You cannot stand in a court of law if you are not a man or woman created by God, court of common law, can you? So we've got to really get down to these fundamentals and find out what we are, who we're, how our relationship with God through Christ is, what does it mean, and so on. What does our name mean? What is a name? How does it fit in? We need to know this form, this structure. That's certainly is a place where we can start. Another thing I think is very important is what is, as it says on that website, what it says on those two links I've given you recently. One which is the article about being a Christian or a pagan or whatever, and the other one is that Exodus WordPress website that talks about deregistering, unregistering. That article also, I'll put these two underneath this video again for you to look at. But we do need to deregister, I think, but I think it's something that we have to take very serious and be very careful about. It's not just something you just chuck ourselves into. I think we've got to be very careful about what we're doing, because I'm sure there are traps and there's no easy way out here. So yes, deregister. Yes, understand the name. Yes, understand your relationship with your name and why it's called what it is, and so on, and how it relates to the law, where the law comes from. Common law relates to God's law. What Bible they use in the courts and the municipal buildings. Yes, it's a KJV version, and so on. We need to know these basics. We need to know that we're either a man or a woman. don't we? And by the way, talking about this man and woman stuff, it's worth considering all this confusion over gender that's being generated through social engineering and chemical engineering, for example, probably the vaccines, but I can't cite anything there, but I certainly know about bisphenol A. You know, bisphenol A is a desexer. So what are you if you're neither a man or a woman? How does that stand under the law? Are you a man or a woman of God if you have been chemically engineered into being or socially engineered into being something that you're not? These are questions we've got to think about, getting to the fundamentals. And when we can recognise the lay of the land and the fundamentals and so on, then I think the next thing we've got to do is actually hold our position lawfully in one way or another. Again, that refers to Ephesians, hold your ground. And so these are things that I think we must consider. And I think another thing we must consider is the purpose is the legal fiction. For example, some people say, well, okay, I'm a man and I am this or whatever, but I use the legal fiction like putting on a coat. I've suggested this before, but I've rethought it. So here's the new position. You know, is the legal fiction, can you treat the legal fiction like a coat that you want to wear whenever you feel like joining in with the big corporate entity, and then you take it off if you don't fancy it? Isn't that having your cake and eat it? I've just thought about in retrospect. Probably it is, really. And this is one of the reasons why I've got off the Facebook, and I'm unregistering myself from all these organisations, because I don't think you can. It is a way of serving two masters, isn't it? Yeah, I could be a legal fiction today and then I won't be tomorrow. And is it honourable to pretend and use this legal fiction to get something for yourself from this system and then get out of it, and then they try and claim something from you and you say, no, I'm nothing to do with it? Surely you have to get back to the render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. If you've contracted with the system, surely you've got to hand back to it. Made a little pact with the devil, you've got to do your due if you want to break free. These again are things that we have to consider. Can we just use this for legal fiction if we want to? I would suspect that with enough study and with enough application of this stuff, that we could live without ever using a legal fiction, without ever saying that we are a name. But this is all rather new to me, and I think that I think there's probably a lot of people out there who know a lot more about it than me, and I hope that you're sharing your information with those people who you know. So we are, again, as I said before, we're certainly in very interesting times, and I think that even a small understanding of the common law, the law, natural law, I suppose, as well, but certainly the common law, and how to write letters in a way that do not commit yourself to their system, because they're always bombarding you with their mail. Say for example, you move house, you get bombarded with the local council, fill in the forms, you've got to pay your council tax or something, but if you don't want anything to do with them, there are ways and means of not engaging and stopping that conversation, stopping that harassment, totally dead. And we have to be aware of how to do that. It is rather simple when you get it, and it is rooted in that state of mind that you are nothing to do with me. And so we go back again to seeing how the land lies in the absolute fundamentals and living in those fundamentals. And if we're living in those very basic things, we are created from God, we are we follow God's law through Christ, and so on, we will behave in a certain way that stops them from taking from us, from interfacing with us, from getting joinder with us, you see. And so again, we go back to that very basics, finding out our true position. And this is very much about knowing who you are, isn't it? And again, you look out, you go any street in the country, in any country, and you look around you and you see people, they're just meandering around. They don't know who they are. If they knew their true reference points, they'd start behaving in a different way. And they would also begin to recognize that which tempts them away from living in a very true way, and then you're just going down the big weaving web of one thing trying to solve another, and every solution is a problem in the end, and every problem has a solution which becomes a problem. We've got to get away from that, get down to these very basics. So there we are. I suppose the bottom line is know our true position and hold it. Everything else comes from there, really, but it doesn't come instantly. This is not a quick fix, and it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy at all. And the difficulty of it actually hones who we are. It is the anvil upon which the horseshoe is being hammered. It's not an easy way out. We've got to, it's the effort that we're using here, and the searching for detail and the integrity and the honour, etc., and the application of that in such a dishonourable and dreadfully run world, it just strengthens us. That's what it does. And I think that's one way we have to look at this world around us. Not so much the world as it is, but as in how it's governed, and the corporations that are trying to control it and control you. If you begin to stand your ground in a world like that, you are going to be like a giant big light, and that light will intensify the more real and true that you get. But that intensity of the brightness comes through effort and application. There you go. Speak to you later.